Hey, thanks for listening. This is Eric Simpson, producer for Grief Heals. I want to talk to you about this episode coming up and ask you a favor. But first, let me talk about the episode. In this episode, Lisa underscores the importance of being present and attentive to our grief. Rather than rushing to move on or to get over it or to get on with my life, that tends to repress our grief and makes matters worse. She introduces the 5 gates of grief, which we've talked about if you go back several episodes when we first started the podcast, by Frances Weller, which cover various types of losses and unmet needs that everyone experiences. She emphasizes the necessity of bringing loving attention to these unmet needs and unwitnessed griefs. She cautions against judging ourselves for not getting over it quickly, for what we might think of as acting out or not being in control of ourselves. Lisa also explores how our culture often fails to provide space and support for the grieving process. We live in a grief denying and death evading culture. Any kind of loss is seen as a failure in our culture. And there's really not much space given to truly grieve. And that often leads to feeling shame over our ongoing pain. Lisa advocates for self-compassion, loving ourselves, slowing down, and listening to the wisdom of the body as essential ways to tend to our grief. Now, the favor. If you like this podcast, if you like this episode, if there's anything about it that you like, then we ask that you please signal that by clicking like or following us on whatever platform you listen to Grief Hills and by sharing it on social media. You can also share it by putting a link in an email or in a text message and sending it to a friend. Or you could go door to door, knock on doors and ask, well, no, you probably don't want to do that. But anything that you can do is the point. Anything you can do to help promote our mission of changing the conversation on grief would be greatly appreciated. And we thank you for being a listener. Now that we've got that out of the way, here's Lisa.
Welcome to another episode of Grief Heals, the podcast where we explore how it is that grief heals us with our relationship with ourselves, with one another, and our whole wide world. I am your host, Lisa Michelle Zega, and I am excited to have another conversation. Whew. Hello, beautiful friends. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Grief Heals. And listen, oh my goodness, for anyone who listened to last week's episode and the week before that, first of all, a big giant thank you. And second of all, a big giant apology. I didn't realize that I was recording from my computer mic. Tech is not my thing. And so if you endured, just wow and thank you. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't realize I'd missed a message from Eric saying, hey, what happened to the sound quality? So that was on me. Thank you again. So, all right, let's just take a second to ground ourselves and prepare for today's episode. And thank you for joining the conversation and all the things. So just first of all, become aware of yourself. Become aware of yourself in your body. And one way to do that is to just simply notice how your body is connected to its environment, right? You might be noticing how you're connected through your sense of smell, hearing, sight, taste, touch, right? Just become aware of sensations in your body and how you're connected through your senses to your environment. And bring your awareness to your feet. And wherever they are, however they are, just notice how they're connected. What are they doing? How are they resting? And sense into your feet. Become aware of your breathing. And just allow yourself to arrive right here, right now, with nothing else to do, nowhere else to go. Just arriving in this space exactly as you are. Okay. So, what I'm imagining that we're going to be talking about today, and I say that because if you've listened to Grief Heals with me, you know that we can take all kinds of tours. So, right now, though, what I'm thinking is we're going to talk about Francis Weller's Gates of Grief and how they intersect. And there's something else top of mind that I just want to mention. And that is, I was at a training, I was conducting a training for an organization on motivational interviewing. And the way that I do that is I just ground people into the foundation of like our own neurobiology, right? The how our brain, how our nervous system influences what we think and what we do. And that just lays a foundation to give a motivation for why take the time to learn something like motivational interviewing. Okay. But while I was there, a woman noticed that on my business card, it talked about the podcast. And she's like, oh, Grief Heals. And I said, yeah, that's one of the main things that I do in this world is guide people in bringing love to their losses. And she talked about how her mom died 9 years ago and how she really beats herself up because it's been 9 years and she should be over it by now. And why does it impact her so deeply? And I shared with her that there is nothing wrong with her. There is something wrong. I'm going to say there's something wrong with our culture's approach to grief in such a way that it leaves us feeling isolated, alone, like there's something wrong with us, not knowing where to go. We feel untethered. And what she said is, I look at this person and they seem to be over it in a month, and this person, and what's wrong with me? And that just makes me so sad because so many of us, and it's not just with grief, it's around so many things that there's a system, a culture surrounding us, influencing us, how we're doing life. And then when it doesn't work, we think I'm the defect, right? Like the same system that says, hey, you should just function like a machine. The same system rooted in capitalism that's had its foundations built on the backs of human flesh, pressing individuals to how far can you go? A whole system of slavery, right? Where we're literally treating people like material, like machines, like they can just, okay. Go, Lisa, go. Slow, Lisa, slow. And so, but we get caught up in being treated like a machine. And that productivity is the only thing that makes a human matter. And when we don't feel productive, we feel like there's something wrong with me. No, there's something wrong with dehumanizing human. How about that? So the 5 gates of grief really bring into an awareness how it is that we connect with places that need love within us, all right? And within our ancestry and within our culture. And the way my brain works, this is an ecosystem, and all of these things are connected. They all influence one another. So these are by Francis Weller. He's mentioned the 5 gates of grief in his books, Entering the Healing Ground, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, and others. So, all that we love, we will lose. That's the first gate of grief. The places that did not receive love, the places within us that have been kept from love's light, the sorrows of the world, what we expected that we did not get, the grief of our ancestry that's been passed down from generation to generation. And then he also offers us a sixth gate, and that is the trauma. I'm going to say that's the trauma of all these gates being unmet. And then the trauma of when things happen to us, like in that blunt, sudden way that doesn't then have a place to heal, to find resolution within the body. And that would be another gate of grief. All right. So when people think of grief, it's often thought of when we lose someone that we love to death, right? When someone dies. It's also, though, when we simply lose someone, there are several ways that we lose loved ones who are still remaining on this earth in their earth body suit, right? But then it's also this idea of everything we love, we lose. We lose our animals. We lose our homes. We lose our friends. We lose places that we've loved. We also lose like our sense of normalcy, right? To illness, when our skills diminish or we lose some capacity that we once had, even when we had a dream that we lost. So one of the ways that our losses intersect is no matter what gate you enter through, what it does is it brings up, so let's just take what we most think of. We lose a loved one dies. Well, the places that are holding our various losses, even just from the first gate, that everything we love, we will lose. The places within us that are holding the loss, the unmet, unwitnessed, unheard losses that are within us. When we enter the gate of losing someone we love through death, those other losses seem to just crawl up and out in hopes of getting our attention this time. I have an image of little ones pulling at the skirt of a mama. My turn, mom, mommy, pick me up. Mama, listen to me. Mama, hold me. Right? And we don't recognize that that's what's happening. It's not necessarily that we're hearing actual voices saying, hey, I also need attention. Hey, remember when this happened and we were just told to move on, to ignore it? Remember when your doggy died and your family just said, well, we'll get you another one, and we just all kept going? Remember when grandpa died and we just all kept on going? Remember when dad left the home, but we just kept going and we didn't talk about how we were doing or recognize that love, that loss within your little body needed to be held, needed to be comforted, needed to be nurtured, that you actually needed what your daddy didn't do when he left? That so just because these things happen, and they happen regularly in our world, doesn't mean they don't leave marks, doesn't mean they don't leave gaps, doesn't mean they don't leave wounds that still need to be tended and nurtured and held and witnessed and released in the body. Like the body, I was with a client yesterday and she said, well, I don't know. I don't know what is going on or what I want to talk about. And I'm all, no problem. Let's just scan the body. The body will tell us where to go. It is a beautiful GPS system. Our emotions are an information system. Our body sensations are an information system. All that we are carrying is being held and carried for us in the body. So the aches, the pains, the headaches, the not being able to sleep, the pain in my knee, the churning in my gut, the thickness in my throat, the compression in my shoulders, that heat on the back of my neck, that buzzing. Yeah, the body communicating. One person said to me yesterday in scanning her body, well, my tummy just doesn't want me to do anything. It just wants calm attention and a little appreciation for all that it's digesting for me. Yeah, how about that as a metaphor for what you might need? How about some calm attention? One of the things that Eric said early on in our podcast is he defined love simply as attention. And I just think that lives in me so powerfully. Yeah. What if one expression of love is simply attention, simply slowing down and providing a calm witness to yourself? Also, in a training that I did on, was it Friday? Or no, Monday, yesterday. No, day before yesterday. Doesn't matter. Okay, but on Monday, a woman was talking about the impact that the motivational interviewing training was having. And she was like, oh, wow, it's like I need to wipe my own lenses so that I can arrive fresh to the person in front of me and just give them a bit of grace, just be with them in what they're going through, and recognize that they need me to recognize that I've got lenses both from my history and from what I'm carrying in my life today. And when I'm hearing them through my lens. Can I set that lens down so that I'm not judging them and being harsh with them and shoulding on them? And I listened and I'm like, yeah. And can you imagine? Can you imagine doing that for the person in the mirror? Like giving her a fresh lens, giving the attention to, okay, well, what do you need today? What's going on today? That, by the way, is a way that I see self-love. I did not realize that there is like a conflicting message around self-care or self-love. And that on the one hand, some people see that as simply self-indulgence. Do whatever the self wants without regard to the other people in your life, to the connections in your community, to the connections in your family. I don't see that as self-love. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Isn't love like nurturing? Isn't love attentive? Isn't love not keeping a record of wrongs? Isn't love like gracious? Isn't love just being with you in the energy of wholeness, of goodness, of kindness, of self-control, of compassion. That's how I want to be in love with another human. So then why would I change the definition of love when it comes to being with the human that I am? Right? So there are times when I am coping and I might be binge watching TV or eating mindlessly or stuffing my face with pizza or just whatever types of things that I learned, I absorbed in my environment growing up. Like, well, this is the way we get comfort. Right. And then the way the culture tells us that we get comfort. Oh, you want to be comforted? You don't feel good? Buy something. You want to be comforted, like really indulge yourself. Go spend time at a spa, go get your nails done and your hair did and all the things. And none of these things are like coping ways that we engage coping are not necessarily wrong. Like they have gotten us here. We've relied on coping skills for survival. And a lot of us, we didn't even realize that these were just the coping skills we absorbed because when we needed comfort, this is what our family did. If I needed comfort as a kid, I got to eat something. Like that was, and that has been passed down for generations in my family of origin. Food is the great comforter. Okay. But when I'm just eating mindlessly, what I call that self-love, what I say, well, I'm nurturing myself. I am helping myself to have all that I need to grow and heal and connect and find wholeness. Well, no, I wouldn't say that. I would say I'm doing what I know how to do to get by, right? And oftentimes I interrupt my coping skills. And sometimes I just watch, I notice, oh, I see you. I see you, honey. You must be going through something. And right now, I just love the way you're eating that pizza. Oh my gosh, you are so cute eating that pizza. And I just let myself have a coping skill. And that's not what I would call self-love. Self-love, again, it's just giving myself like attention. Am I eating that pizza with mindfulness, recognizing how it feels in my body, being attuned and attentive to what I'm carrying, recognizing what am I trying to feed the pizza to? What part of me is just wanting to be comforted? Now I'm slowing down a bit. I'm seeing a bit more, right? And I don't want to make anything good or bad or right or wrong in here. And I am wanting to parse out that when I'm talking about loving ourselves, that grief is love and grief meets the loss with love. Grief is literally here to bring love, like what I needed that I didn't get. What kind of comfort was going to help me feel complete or held or witnessed? I mean, there are things we simply don't make better. We don't make it better that dad left or that my husband died. No, we don't make that better. We tune in and hold that. Okay, well, what dreams were being held in that relationship? What did I want that I didn't get? What parts of our relationship are left unfinished? What were we yet to do? What were the dreams and imaginings that we were to have together? That's the place that needs to be held. That's the place that needs to move its energy. That I don't know in all the ways that your losses need to be nurtured, need to be acknowledged, need to be sat with, cried with, yelled with, right? I just know that they're there and that these gates of grief are invitations because they happen. They happen to all of us. There is none of us that escapes that everything and everyone I love, I will lose. Everyone has places within us that have not known love, that have not ever been held in the loving gaze, in the warm blanket, in the cozy fire, in the cup of hot cocoa, like just wrapped up and nurtured in. Yeah, you are super loud. You were made so loud, baby girl. Oh, and it's beautiful. And I'm going to hold you right there. That's one place in me that I went a lifetime not knowing love. It was always that was wrong some way. It wasn't welcome. You're too loud. No, I'm right here. Turn it down. But what about the fact that I am naturally loud? What about that she gets to be loved, that she gets to be witnessed, that there's nothing wrong with her because her volume is louder than her neighbor's volume. I literally come from generations of loud. And somehow my loud in the house was too much. My loud in the schools was too much, on the playground, wherever it was. Well, that part, she just got shamed and she needed witness. So the places in us that did not receive love, and how about the sorrows of this world? Like, we move on thinking all of these things are normal. I just started a book called A People's History. It might have more to the title. Howard Zinn, you might know it. But this history of the United States is told not through the lens of the captor, but of the captive, not through the lens of the oppressor or the victor, but of the victimized. And what about those sorrows that just get literally ignored because advancement, exploration is good? And so all the good that we are doing and reporting back to the king and the queen. But what about the people whose homes were stolen, whose women were raped? What about the people whose families were stolen and imprisoned and enslaved? What about people whose land was taken? What about from their eyes? Because that sorrow doesn't just go away. Literally, the land is holding it. Our bodies are holding it. It's in our DNA being passed down from generation to generation. So maybe I'm moving into our ancestral grief, but the sorrows of our world collectively. And what about the sorrows of the land itself? Because we are all in this environment, this universe together, and all of it gets to be met with our attention only when we stop and notice. Can we bring love and grief? Like, our losses are there in part to stop us. Anyone who has ever had a loved one die, I'm imagining you remember what it's like to be in the time where time seems to stand still and nothing makes sense and nothing's coming together. And you can't even believe that the world keeps turning. Yeah, that slowness is literally for us to stop and notice. And yet we live in a culture that does not support our stopping. We live in a culture that gives some people 4 days, some people a week to grieve. But could you still come back into work tomorrow? I mean, we really need you in here. There's not you're 18 now. We really don't care what happened to you from 0 to now. You're an adult. Just keep on keeping on. And grief says, hey, your losses need love. So nothing wrong with you when you are still experiencing your loss 9 years from now. And losses that go unmet, unwitnessed, unnurtured, they don't go away. They come out sideways. They come out in our bodies. They come out in our nervous system. They come out in our headaches, in our shutdown, in our panic. They come out in the anger towards one another. They come out in the ignoring of other people's pain because we haven't even been with our own. So grief really is the invitation to come home to ourselves, to each other, and to the world. And to come home means to bring love to all of these gates of grief. So if you would just take a breath with me, recognizing we breathe the same air. And there is a way that all we need is love. Because when love comes, love spills out into action. Love is always attentive and active and addressing all these gates of grief for ourselves, each other, and the world in what is needed. We can't do what's needed until we stop to see what is, what was left in me, what is now. Okay. Let's just breathe. I know we'll be breathing until we're together again. That sounds so silly. But we breathe in the awareness that we are together in this. It's all connected. All right, sending so much love, wrapping my arms out around myself, around you, around our world, knowing that I am holding and I am also held. You are holding and you are also held. We are holding and we are also held. All right, I love you. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Grief Heals with Lisa Michelle Zega. The podcast is produced by me, Eric Simpson, in association with Jump Up and Down Productions. Music by Kendalian, Drunken Nights to Sunday Mornings, and Stefan Carlin, A Calming Ocean, A Common Notion. If you would like more information about the work Lisa does, point your browsers to legityou.com. That's LEGITYOU. Lisa can also be reached at Lisa Michelle at legityou.com. This has been a Jump Up and Down production.